Hey, what's up guys? I'm Cody York. Thanks for joining me. Now that we've captured all those awesome Milky Way photos out in the field, we're gonna put them together on a computer. The first step for the PC is stacking them in Sequator. Let's get started.
Okay guys, so the first thing we do once we sit down at our computer is we're gonna download our files onto the desktop. And I prefer to put them in a folder on the desktop because it works faster being on the local drive versus being on an external drive or cloud storage. You could use those two other options, the cloud or an external hard drive. There's nothing wrong with that, but it will work a little slower because it's pulling from another space off-site. Once you've downloaded your photos into a folder on the desktop or drive, you're then going to go into Lightroom and import them. I've already gone ahead and done this process, but the way you would do it is be into library mode. You would go down here, select import. You would find that folder on the desktop or external drive, whichever you're using. In this case, I've put them on my desktop. They're in this folder titled Southwest Trip Fall, and it would be under new photos. They would all appear here, and I would hit the import dialog button, not done. You'd want to hit import, and it would import them into Lightroom. I've already done that, so I'm just going to hit done. And here are all my photos under Southwest Trip Fall from the desktop. So I'm going to select White Pocket. These are the images I want to show you today. We're going to go ahead and go through and find out which sky images from the trip that I want to show you to edit in Starry Landscape Stacker and or Sequator if you're on a PC. So I've kind of already done that liberty. I've gone through, found some of my favorites. I want to show you guys this one. This is the final edit of what we're going to be putting together. The sky images are right here. These are all the raws, and I've gone ahead and made selections. You'll want to narrow these down so you can find them. I put a flag on each of them, which is the letter P, and there's a total of 16 shots, I believe. I'll show you right here, 16 selected. That was a shift click on a Mac. And I'm going to go ahead and just select this first file, and I'm going to do some small edits here in Lightroom before we export these all for Starry Landscape Stacker. So I'm going to go up to the Develop module. The first thing I do is look at our white balance and our exposure, and I kind of eyeing up the histogram to make sure we're in the right place. So overall, this photo is a little on the dark side, and it's probably a little on the cooler side. So the first thing I'm going to do is bump the exposure so I can see the colors a little more, maybe around a 40 or 50. And none of these settings, as far as plus or minus, is accurate or carries over to be precisely the same for every photo. It's more of just using a feel and a visual of what works and looks best for you. Now I'm going to go up here to the temperature, might increase the warmth a little bit. I like to have a little bit more magenta. I tend to like my Milky Ways to be a little bit on the cooler side and the more magenta side, but that's a preference of taste. For me, the night sky tends to be a little more cooler, so I'm going to keep it at that. The next step I want to do is increase the whites because we want some of those stars to pop a bit more. I'm going to boost that a little bit. You can see the sky brightening up. From there, I'm going to bring down the blacks a little bit just to add some contrast. And then the next major step, we're going to go down here to the lens correction. Now this is a very important step. You want to make sure that remove chromatic aberration is on. And you also want to check enable profile corrections. But the thing here is we like that it's correcting the vignetting, but we don't want it to correct the distortion. And the reason for that is, if you can see here on the screen, we have these banding issues that start to happen when we correct the distortion from the wide angle lens. And that doesn't translate very well, and you see that in the final image. So what we want to do is remove that distortion, and it'll be back to how the original file was. That looks much better. But we do want to correct for that vignetting. So if I turn the vignetting off, you can see it's really heavy because it's a wide angle lens. So I do want that vignetting correction. That's it for lens corrections. Then we're going to go down to the calibration tab where we're going to increase the saturation. We're going to boost the color here in our primary channels, red, green, and blue. This seems to work much better and be more accurate than using the saturation or vibrance slider. And as far as Lightroom settings go, that's pretty much all that I would do in here. I'm gonna zoom in and take a look. There's one other thing. If I want to enhance the Milky Way in here a little bit before my final edit, if I feel comfortable, I'll hit this dialog box over here, the little tab for a local adjustment, and I'm going to create a radial gradient. I'm going to click and drag it over the Milky Way. Let me go back on that, and then make it more accurate into the middle. And then some adjustments that I would do locally just to the core of the Milky Way, I'd uncheck the show overlay, is that I would scroll down here in the dialog box and increase the clarity. I'll overdo it so you see it. It's going to make the Milky Way pop. And then I may boost the whites a little more in the core, and then the blacks a little heavier, add some contrast. And I'll show you a before and after here. So here's the before, there's the after, and that would be it for that. So once we finished up that local mask adjustment, we're going to go ahead and close that dialog box. And then we're going to apply all these settings from this single file to the rest of our sky images. To do that, we're going to shift click all the way to the last file, and we're going to hit sync. And then you want to click the check all dialog button here, and we're going to hit synchronize, and it'll apply those settings to all those photos. So now if I click through, you'll see that these are all the same as far as the sky goes. From there, we're going to keep shift click on all of them, and then we're going to control click on a Mac. We're going to hit export here. And then this is very important on these settings. So we want to put these in a subfolder. I put them on the desktop temporarily because I'm not going to save these files. So I'm just going to call these SkyStack. And then the file naming, you want to leave this as the original file name. File settings, you're going to change this to a TIFF. You're going to want this as ProPhoto RGB, which is the max color space. Change that to 16-bit depth. Not going to do anything else with image resizing or output sharpening. Metadata, you want to have it as all. That helps the stacking software work better. And then we're going to hit export. Okay, so once you've done all your editing to your files in Lightroom, you're going to go ahead and export them to your desktop. Once you've done that, you're going to open up Sequator, and you're going to double click on star images here in the upper left. Then we're going to have to find those sky images, which we saved under the folder SkyStack. Double click that, and then you're going to Control A to select all those files and hit open. From here, we want to make sure that in composition we have align stars and freeze ground selected. And then second, you need to double click on output and tell the software where to save this final composite. And this is very important because we want to put this back into the same folder as our raw files, which for my situation is right here in Southwest Trip Fall. We're going to hit open once we've named it with a file name. We're going to say White Pocket Milky Way Stack and hit save. So the next step is to select the sky region. You're going to make sure it's checked on irregular mask. And from here, we're going to paint in the sky area with the mouse. And this doesn't have to be exact, but close to the horizon line. We're going to tell the software where the sky is in this image so it can align all those stars together. So if you need to make it smaller on this PC, I'm just using 2 fingers to zoom in and out to make that mouse mask bigger or smaller. Gonna get a little closer. And then once you've done that, we're gonna go ahead and hit start. and it's gonna do its thing and align all these sky images together for one clean shot. Okay, so once it's done computing and doing all of its rendering that it needs to do, it automatically has saved it since you selected the output folder. And from there, you can go ahead and close Sequator. And then you're gonna go back into Lightroom and import this file into Lightroom. You're gonna hit Import, Library, Import. You would go ahead and find that photo again, which would be under the desktop here, and the folder Southwest Trip Fall. It would be under White Pocket, and it would appear here in New Photos, but I've already done that again. So I'm gonna hit Cancel, and then it would show back here in your timeline. I'm gonna go ahead and find it. Here's the final stacked image, and you know that because it's gonna be labeled as minimum horizon noise as a TIFF file right there. And that's it.
All right, guys, so now that we've stacked those sky images in Sequator and we have one good clean sky file, we're gonna import that back into Lightroom, where we're gonna combine that with the foreground image to get our composite. Let me show you how.